Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of our four-part women series, Farm Strong, Mental Health Strategies for Farming Families. I'm your host, Katelyn Duban, and I am so excited to be with you here today. A little bit about myself. I'm a grain farmer from Southern Alberta, a storyteller, and a community builder. I have had the privilege of celebrating the stories of women in agriculture through my podcast, the Rural Woman Podcast, since 2019. With close to 1 million downloads, I've been able to reach and amplify the voices of rural women to a worldwide audience, including our speaker here today. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. We are going to spend the next hour together, and I am confident you will hear a very inspirational and empowering story from Katelyn Duban. As we get started, I want to acknowledge that I am coming to you from the lands of the Blackfoot people in Treaty 7 territory, as well as part of the Métis Nation of Alberta. This land has sustained and supported the lives and culture of all Indigenous people since long before we began tracking our history. We want to pay respect to all Indigenous people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship with the land. Before I introduce you to our keynote speaker, Katelyn Duban, there is a little housekeeping. This session will be recorded and a link sent out to everyone who has registered. So if you have to get away or want to share this with family or friends, that will be available in your inbox in a few days. As you may or may not have noticed, today's session is just the first part of a four-part series that FCC is hosting. After today, there will be 3 additional sessions covering information to support women in agriculture. These sessions include one on finance, HR practices, and farm transition. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to register for the upcoming sessions. If you have any technical questions, there is a blue support button on the screen on the lower part, so make sure you click on there and they'll be able to help you out. As you may have noticed, there is a chat on the right-hand side of the screen, and I would love for you to drop a hello in there and let us know where you're dialing in from today. Beside the chat, there is a Q&A box, so feel free to ask as many questions as you have in there, and we will get to as many of them as we can following Katelyn's session. The Q&A is moderated, and I will ask the questions at the end of Katelyn's presentation. Your questions can be asked anonymously. There is also going to be polling questions, which will be posted throughout the presentation, and you can find that beside the Q&A box. Please take a quick moment to complete the questions once they become available. Now, let me introduce you to our keynote speaker, Katelyn Duban. Katelyn is a best-selling author and resilience expert. She focuses on sharing practical strategies and heartfelt stories to help partners in farming support each other through their mental health struggles. Katelyn will share her experiences and proven tools to foster resilience, open communication, and emotional support within farming families. Please join me in welcoming Katelyn Duban to the stage. Hi, Katelyn, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I'm so excited to be here. This is for real a dream come true for me.
I am so excited for you, and I cannot wait to hear all of the wisdom and goodness that you have to share with us today.
Thank you. All right, we will get started. So, hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Like I just said, this is really a dream come true for me. I am a former dairy farmer, and I'm proud to say that I was one of the first women. Oh, let me rephrase that. I was only the second woman to ever be elected to the Farmers Dairy Board of Directors here in Nova Scotia. And my term was very short. We ended up selling our farm, but I'm proud to say that that was a really exciting time for me in my farming days. And I now have a hobby farm with myself and my children. So I still, I couldn't get out of the having animals. They cost me money now instead of making me money. So on to our talk about resilience and mental health strategies. I want to start with saying I think it's fair to say that when we were growing up, we were not taught how to be resilient. We were not taught what to do if we felt depressed or anxious or overwhelmed, or as bad as having a suicidal thought. And if we did feel overly emotional about something, the coping mechanism that most of us were taught was to suck it up, tough it out, and get over it. like stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Today, we're going to talk about some things that most of us didn't learn in our younger years, but these things will change your life. And they won't only change your life. If you learn to use these tools and pass them on to other people in your life, your teams at work, if you work off farm, your teams at home on the farm, your friendships, your intimate relationships. And I think what I'd like to say is most important is if we share these tools with our children, I think we can really change their future. So I want to warn you, though, that these things aren't easy. It takes a lot of practice. And sometimes we feel like maybe we fail when we don't master things really quickly. But I want you to reframe failure because in school we learned that failure was a bad thing because we never wanted to fail a test. But failure is actually an opportunity to learn something new. So from today on, how about we reframe the word failure into a growth spurt? Because I think that sounds a lot better because they really are an opportunity for growth. I'm seeing your polling questions come up here. It's good to know. And so the most common question for how often do you and your farming partner talk about mental health occasionally is the most common answer. And the most common challenge we all feel is work-life balance. And I think that's in any industry, but especially in farming. How comfortable do we feel discussing mental health struggles? Somewhat comfortable, which I think is common. And I'm happy that I'm part of the peer and community support that's being offered right now, which is the most common answer for the supports that we all need. And my reason for asking those polling questions is because I don't want you to feel like you're alone in these struggles. I think we all face common challenges on our farms and in our families. And I want you to feel like you are not alone. So a little more about me. Oops, I went too far. Ah, Technology is fun when it works. So I'm Karen Dean, as we've already said. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur, one of those businesses being a farm. I'm also a best-selling author, and I have been solo parenting 3 incredible humans for over 13 years. And I call myself a self-made resilience expert because most of what I know about resilience, I learned from dealing with some really, really hard situations in my life. But I've also spent years studying it along with topics of mindset, self-confidence, and how to create the life of your dreams. So I'm not a psychologist with a bunch of letters after my name. The only letters are BBA because I took a business degree. And so I'm not sharing experiences that I've studied that were other people's experiences. I have lived this. I've been the mom scared for my life and the lives of my children on many occasions. I've been the terrified woman on the other end of a 911 call more times than I can count. And I'm still a woman just trying to figure life out on my own with no family support. And some of the things I'm going to talk about today might seem really hard, and I want you to try to sit through it. And I'm going to talk about tools that are going to help you work through those hard things, or what we commonly know are triggers. So how do I know these things work? Is because I use these tools every single day to get through the tough things in my life. And they've worked so well for me that I have never resorted to unhealthy coping mechanisms like alcohol, drugs, or any other harmful addictions. And I've never taken an antidepressant or a mood altering drug in my life. And I know some people need those things, and I can't even begin to explain, other than by using these tools, how I have never had to do that. So I know firsthand that these tools work. And I'm going to be raw and real with you with some really tough stories today. And like I said, some of them might trigger something in you, and I want you to try to sit through it. And if you need help afterwards, please reach out to all of the resources that are available to you. There are many, and I know FCC shares some of them on their website. But I also don't want you to ever feel bad for me for what I'm saying, because my life is amazing despite all of the things that I have been through. So that's why I can say with confidence that you have everything you need inside of you. Oh my goodness, my buttons are too fast. You have everything you need inside of you to get through whatever life throws at you, to conquer any challenge, and to have an incredible and fulfilling life. But it's not easy. We do have to make some tough choices, and we do have to do some work. And it's all about just growing and keep trying. But I don't want you to just hear what I've said today and ignore it. I want you to try these things out in your own life and see how they work for you. So, the dictionary defines resilience as the ability to become strong, healthy, and successful after something bad happens. And something bad is very individual because something that I find to be very bad and hard to deal with might seem easy to some of you. So it all depends on our life experiences. So I define resilience as your ability to keep getting back up and keep growing when life tries to knock you down. And I think the key is to keep growing because resilience is also like a muscle. The more you work on it, the stronger it gets. So we exercise to make our body stronger, but we've never been taught to put the same amount of focus on making our minds stronger. So the first step in becoming resilient is to be prepared when the hard things come. Oh my goodness. And it's much easier than you think. So I am going to gift you today the top 8 tools that I have used to become really resilient and to keep growing. So the first tool you already got a quick glimpse of is to breathe. Now I know that sounds silly because we are all breathing every second of the day, but I mean really consciously breathing. If you think about it, when something upsets you or scares you or hurts you, the first thing we do is tense up, our shoulders go up by our ears, and we hold our breath. And by holding our breath, we're depriving our brain of the oxygen it needs to make a healthy decision. So, to change your reaction, you actually have to think about the process of breathing, not on what upset you, but just on breathing. So we could do a big, yoga breath of 5 deep breaths right now. But I know that in the heat of a moment, when you're facing something really complicated, my example from farming is trying to move cattle with your husband. Sometimes it gets pretty heated and you don't have time to stop and take 5 deep breaths. So what I have learned to do is just to repeat in my head, breathe, breathe, just breathe. And that really changes how I respond in situations that are hard. And I experimented and did it firsthand with my daughter's friend back when they played high school soccer. This young woman's name was Brooke, and her mom was at every single game, but she got the opportunity to go to a Reba McEntire concert, and she was going to miss the first game of Brooke's soccer history. And wouldn't you know it, Brooke got injured during that game, and her mom wasn't there. So the other people on the field, the ref and the coaches were out there, and Brooke was screaming in pain, and she couldn't get up, and she was starting to hyperventilate. And you may have seen in the intro screen, one of the words I used about myself is a limit pusher. So parents aren't supposed to go out onto the soccer pitch, but I broke the rules and I went out because I knew Brooke needed help. And I went out and I said, Brooke, look at me, look in my eyes. And she opened her eyes and I just walked her through, breathe, breathe, breathe. And within about 30 seconds, she was calm. And she was able to stand up and walk off of the field and realize that she wasn't hurt as badly as she thought she was. So there's just so much power in taking that time to focus on our breathing. It's often said that in life, it's 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react to it. So this simple tool of breathing, dropping your shoulders, allows you to have more control in your reaction to any situation. To elaborate a little bit more, 95% of what we do every single day is not consciously controlled by us. So that's 57 seconds out of every minute. So for only 3 seconds out of every minute, we are actually consciously controlling what we do. Everything our body needs to function properly just happens, from eating and breathing to sleeping to making memories. We are essentially running on autopilot. And our brain is programmed to control the way we think, what we believe, the way we feel and act and react, and pretty much everything else that forms who we are. And the key to taking control of your subconscious mind is in understanding the way it works. And the beauty of it is, it's not really as complicated as it might sound. And what's really interesting is the subconscious mind cannot distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. It's like a sponge, soaking up everything around it, including our thoughts, our beliefs, our experiences, and those of the people around us. So imagine you're planting the seeds in your garden, and those seeds represent your thoughts. Positive thoughts are the seeds that grow into beautiful flowers or nourishing vegetables or the beautiful corn crop or soybeans. On the other hand, the negative thoughts are the stubborn weeds that sap all the nutrients out of the soil and choke the life out of everything around them. So if you're constantly watering and nurturing the positive seeds, then they flourish and you end up with a beautiful garden or a beautiful crop in the field. And in your mind, the analogy is it's a garden of positivity and health. But if you neglect that mental garden and allow the negative weeds or the negative thoughts to take over, then they quickly overshadow those flowers of positivity. And with every day, those weeds get bigger and stronger. And they wrap themselves around all of the flowers, which are positive thoughts and emotions and actions. And before you know it, that beautiful garden is tangled up in all the weeds, and it's just a big mess of negativity. So how do we control and tend to our mental garden? It's a lot about mindfulness and being intentional, which we're going to talk about more today, and becoming aware of your thoughts and consciously choosing to focus on the positive. And even that simple tool of consciously breathing instead of abruptly reacting to something. By doing those things, we can rewire our subconscious brain. Because again, it doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. So if you consciously believe that you cannot be, do, or have something, then you will always be right. The subconscious will do its job and it will create circumstances and find people to prove that you are right. But if you consciously believe that you can be, do, or have something, then again, you will always be right. Your subconscious mind will do its job and create the circumstances and find the people to prove that you are right. And another fun fact, did you know that most of the thoughts and beliefs that we have aren't even our own? All those negative emotions and negative beliefs that mess around in our heads and interfere with our confidence and our self-worth and our ability to attract the right people and situations into our lives are literally not even ours. According to science, those negative beliefs and emotions are programs in our subconscious mind that were formed before we were 7 years old. When we were just small children, our subconscious minds were formed with all those beliefs. So those feelings of, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I will never be successful, or whatever negative thoughts go through your head, were all formed before we even really knew how to plan for our own futures. But I want you to remember, those are somebody else's limits. Those are not your limits. So keep that in mind, because no matter what age we are now, how many years that we've let those thoughts live rent-free in our minds, not even realizing it, we can change them. It just takes being aware of them. And you have to believe, our second tool. You have to believe what's possible. So I want to share a true story about how what we tell ourselves and how our early influences can literally change our lives. When my son was only 7.5 weeks old, I took him to the hospital because he was very, very sick. He woke up one morning like a rag doll. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't even cry. The doctors told me that if I had been just 1 hour later getting him to the hospital, that he would have died. So we were admitted to the hospital after what seemed like he had a million tests done to him in the emergency room. And on our fourth day in the hospital, a team of neurologists, 5 neurologists, came into our room and told me that my little baby boy had been born with a permanent brain injury and would probably never be able to walk or talk and might even need to be tube fed. And then they told me we could go home. So to say that I was devastated would be a huge understatement. And I cried for the first few days that we were back home. And of course, I went online to find out what I could about what the doctors told me he had, periventricular leukomalacia. Now, this was way back in 2001 when the internet wasn't like it is today. And the only thing I found was a chat group with parents talking about how this condition affected their child. And it was horrible. So after a few days of stressing over that, it was like the switch flipped inside of me. And I said to myself, that's not going to be my kid. And I looked at my sweet little baby boy and I said, that's not going to be your story. And then I started a mission to find every kind of professional help that I could get to change his story. And as he got older and he was trying to reach the developmental milestones like all the other children, he would often get really frustrated. And he did learn how to talk. And one of his first words was, can't. So when I was pushing him to be able to do the things that, us normal people do, he would say, I can't. And my response to him was always, there's no such thing as I can't. There's only I don't want to. And I probably said that to him hundreds of times when he was young. There's no such thing as I can't. There's only I don't want to. And he went on to prove those doctors wrong. And when he was 5 years old, he walked onto the school bus just like everyone else. And he started school without any adaptations or extra help. Not long after that, he started driving tractors on our farm and could back up a trailer better than I could. And in 2019, he walked across the stage of his high school to receive his diploma just like everyone else. But then, at the end of June 2020, when the pandemic was at its scariest time, he wasn't feeling well, and he went to the hospital by himself for the first time in his life. He was 19 years old, so considered an adult by hospital rules, and because of COVID restrictions, I couldn't go with him. And he spent almost 12 hours alone in the emergency room to be told that he had a very large mass in his chest that they believed to be cancer. The doctor called me on speakerphone from his bedside to tell me the details. And then the process was a whirlwind. And 12 days later, he was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of cancer. Chemo started 2 weeks later. 8 months later, he was finished treatment after 6 rounds of chemotherapy and 25 rounds of radiation. And throughout it all, he kept that same attitude that I had instilled in him when he was a preschooler. There's no such thing as I can't, there's only I don't want to. And he stayed so positive through that entire journey that you could barely even tell he was sick. He had almost no side effects from his treatment. So I'm proud to say that he's now 23 years old. He will be 24 in a few weeks, and he's healthy and he works full time just like everyone else. He just bought a house, and he's probably one of very few people on the planet who consider cancer to be a minor inconvenience. So he's walking, talking proof that you can reprogram your brain to believe whatever you want it to believe. So, what do you want your brain to believe? The negative things that other people have said to you, or the positive things that will improve your life? Which brings us to our next tool, boundaries. Stop wasting your time on negative people. Like, I could scream that from the rooftops. Stop wasting your time on negative people. There can be 10 people cheering you on, and we usually, the human nature is to focus our energy on the one person who said something negative about us. Could be an acquaintance, a coworker, often a family member. And first of all, I want to remind you that other people's opinions of you are none of your business. Their opinions are based on what's going on in their own world, not who you actually are. Heck, some of the people who say mean things to us may not even really know us, especially on social media, which is huge these days. Some people, because many of us, if we're in the farming industry, are in small towns, some people may be basing their opinions on something you did in high school or even something someone said about you in junior high. So I want you to try not to focus on what those people are saying and try to focus on the people who are cheering you on. It doesn't matter if it's friends or coworkers or family members. You get to choose how much you let them affect your life. You get to choose how much energy you invest in their words, and you get to choose which story you tell yourself. So, are you going to choose to let the negative people affect your life, or are you going to listen to the people who cheer you on? I had to set some really hard boundaries a few years ago. Over the years, as all of us do, I outgrew friends and decided not to spend time with certain people anymore. But in 2018, I had to make the difficult choice to remove my parents and my siblings from my life. And this is really hard in a family farm situation, so I'm grateful that that wasn't my situation. But it took until I was 45 years old to admit to myself that they were holding me back and that I was allowing their opinions of me to keep me playing small. No matter what I talked about doing, they had something negative to say about it. Like, who do you think you are? Or that's a dumb idea. Or you're never going to be able to do that. And insults, constant insults. And since I removed them from my life, I've been able to do so many things that I had dreamt of doing for years. I published a Canadian best-selling book, and I'm here talking to you today. Being a speaker and an author were dreams of mine since I was a little girl, but I never thought I would be able to make those dreams come true because I believed what those other people said. So I know it's really hard to set some boundaries, especially with family, and especially if, you run your farm with your family and maybe it's your spouse that sometimes is negative to you. But I want you to think about how much you let those people influence your own inner voice and your decisions on your life. And make sure you invest the most energy in the people who lift you up and who cheer you on, because you get to choose both online and in person. Veteran motivational speaker Jim Rohn is often quoted as saying that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So think about, who are your 5? Are they people you want to be like? Do they have habits that are healthy? Do they talk badly about other people, or do they help build people up? Think about who you want to be and make sure the people you spend your time with are helping you become that person. And I want to reiterate the social media part of it, because there's so much negativity that you can find on social media. And if you focus on that, it does affect you inside. So choose wisely and start following people who lift you up, who are motivational, who have positive messages, and who inspire others. Find them and follow them. And if you notice that the posts of some people are just making you feel down or upset, unfollow them. They don't know that you unfollowed them. Protect your energy. And I also want to remind you that you are responsible for the energy that you bring into any space, whether it's a room, a relationship, or a social media platform. So make sure you're setting boundaries with yourself and only sharing positive and kind messages online and bringing positive energy into your daily interactions. Because at the end of the day, the only person we need to try to be better than is the person we were yesterday. So if you could improve yourself 1% every day, think of the difference you'd make at the end of the year. So when you catch yourself comparing yourself to other people, remember that you only need to be better than the person you were yesterday. You don't have to be like anybody else. And you need to accept that the person you are today, tomorrow, and every day is perfectly imperfect. No one on this earth is perfect. There are very few people who look like the influencers we see on social media. And with all the filters and digital editing capabilities we have now, most of them aren't presenting their authentic selves either. And most people are only presenting the highlight reel on social media. So if you're seeing something in someone else that makes you feel less than, I urge you to look away and instead focus on all of the wonderful things that are true about you. Because your brain believes what you tell it. So make sure you're telling it something good. And maybe when I said earlier that you have 10 people cheering you on, you thought, I don't have 10 people cheering me on. I don't have anybody cheering me on. I felt that a lot of times. So maybe you have to be the one cheering you on. Maybe you have to be the person cheering the loudest for yourself. And that's okay, because we really do have to be our own biggest cheerleader. Because that voice you hear 100% of your waking hours and even when you're sleeping is your own. So make sure you're saying kind things to yourself and make sure you're saying positive things to yourself, because it's all about listening to your self-talk. So I just have a few quick examples I'm going to click through about how you can take something that sounds negative and turn it into something positive. So instead of saying, I've never done this before, how about thinking it as an opportunity to learn something new? Or instead of, it's too complicated, think about, okay, I'm going to try this from a different direction. Or there's no way this will work. I've thought that a lot of times, but I always did find a way to make it work. Or it's too much of a major change. Switch it to, I'm going to give it my best effort. So it's so easy to just switch those thoughts into something positive if we consciously think about it and take that moment to pause and change our inner dialogue to something positive. So we're about halfway through the tools, trying to go fast. We talked about breathing, believing, setting boundaries, and that we're all perfectly imperfect. And our fifth tool of being resilient and building our mental strength is to focus on what you want. So often we focus on what someone else wants, what they want us to do, what they want us to have for a job, what they want us to look like. But in order to be fulfilled in our own lives and to feel strong enough to handle the tough things, we have to focus on what we want. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't have a plan B. I wanted to be just like my French teacher, Miss Elliott. And when I went to talk to my guidance counselor about what I was going to do after high school, he shattered my dream. He told me that there were already too many teachers and that I would never be able to have a full-time job as a teacher. Even though I had some of the highest marks in my graduating class, and I felt like no one believed in me. And I went home and I remember crying to my mother because I felt like such a failure and I didn't know what to do. And then I thought maybe if I followed in my mother's footsteps, then I would feel successful. So then I thought, maybe she'll be proud of me. So she was the manager at a large company. So I applied for a business degree and I was accepted. I even got a scholarship and I had a great 4 years. And when I graduated from university, you guessed it, I went to work at the company my mom worked for in the office, still trying to make her proud. But I was miserable. And I realized I didn't want to work for somebody else. I was meant to be an entrepreneur. And I kept getting pulled back into that dream of being a teacher. So I started teaching adult education courses in the evenings on bookkeeping and basic computer skills. And then I went on to be a business counselor and a consultant, teaching people how to run their businesses. And that's when I started feeling really fulfilled, when I took the risk and did something that I wanted to do, but no one else thought was a good idea. And that got me where I am today, in front of you and doing what I love and working with clients every day to help them navigate this thing called love, life and love more successfully. So I want you to think about something, one thing that you would like to do that is deep down, you've always wanted to do it, like a big project, or maybe you want to talk to someone that you've been too shy to reach out to, change your hairstyle, change your job. What's one thing that you would like to do that is entirely your idea and not what someone else wants? Sometimes we don't even realize how other people's words have affected us in our lifetime. And we have these unconscious beliefs that we don't even know are there. So I'll tell you a quick story about my hair. When I was in high school, my hair was a little shorter than this. And when I went to university to take a business degree, my mom said to me one day, "Professional women do not have long hair. You need to cut your hair." So I did, and I had very, very short hair for a lot of years. And every time my hair would start getting a little longer, I would go get it cut. And then in the last 5-ish years, I started letting my hair grow long. And one day, someone said to me, "Wow, your hair looks really good. Why haven't you had long hair before?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." And then I came home and I started thinking that night. And I thought, I didn't have long hair because my mom always told me it looked terrible. And every time it started to grow, she told me I should get it cut. So I didn't even realize that that was what was happening. So I want you to really think about what the voices of other people, how they may have affected things you've done in your life. And I want you to think about what your ideal future would look like. What are you doing every day? Where do you live? What does your house look like? How much money do you have in the bank? Picture yourself achieving those goals in vivid detail, because your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. So it will work hard to turn your dreams into reality if you visualize them like they are true. You have to believe that it's possible and believe that you're capable of having whatever you want. And I am proof right here because since I started speaking 5 years ago, I have wanted to work with Farm Credit Canada, and here I am. And next week, I'm going to see Taylor Swift live in a skybox. Another dream come true that I have just envisioned for years. And it came because a friend reached out to me and invited me. I didn't make it happen. I never thought I'd ever be able to do that. So when you focus on what you do want and not on what you don't want, and when you believe in yourself, amazing things can happen. And there's also power in writing it down or making a vision board, which is a whole other talk. But if you make it a vision board and practice it and see it every day, then you have a really good chance of it happening. So by being your authentic self and focusing on what you want, it also helps you be more prepared to handle the hard things when life throws them at you. You still might have some of those growth spurts we talked about at the beginning, but you will eventually get where you want to go if you visualize yourself being there and focus on the things that you want, because your brain believes what you tell it. And then it gets easier to focus on practicing happiness and gratitude every day, finding happiness and practicing gratitude, which is our sixth tool, because we're without a doubt going to face some hard times. I know I've had my fair share, but when you focus on something that makes you happy every day and practice gratitude, find something to be grateful for, it can really, really change your outlook on your entire day. And I know how hard that is when it's something really challenging happening. But you have to remember that you can have bad minutes and you can have bad hours, but try not to ever have a whole bad day, because you can't let all the noise ruin an entire day. We don't get that many of them on this earth. So it's important to try to make the best of them. And again, it's even better when you write them down. Write down what you're happy, what made you happy today. Write down what you're grateful for today. And sometimes we tend to overthink what those might be. So we're going to quickly just do a little gratitude practice right now. Think about someone you love. Think about a place that makes you feel at ease. Think about a beautiful sunset. Or think about something you love to eat. It's that easy. We just did a gratitude practice. So don't overthink it. And like I said, there are guided journals. I published one a couple of years ago. The link is on my website that, can help you with the daily tools to do this. But you don't need a journal. You just need a piece of paper. And I encourage you to put a reminder in your phone at the same time every day, get it to repeat every single day, to write down what you're grateful for or what made you happy that day, so that it becomes a habit, just like brushing your teeth is. And like I said, they don't have to be big things. They can be that your corn is where you wanted it to be, that you had a healthy heifer calf today, or whatever that looks like in your world. There's just so many little things to be grateful for. So we just have to use our conscious mind, that 5%, to notice them. And very soon it will become part of our 95% subconscious mind, and we won't even have to think about it anymore. We will just automatically notice all these good things. Which takes us to our next tool, which is something I think we all struggle with the most, which is feeling the feelings, all of the feelings. But we have to feel the feelings to get through them. whether it's anger, disappointment, fear, shame, guilt. It's okay to feel those things. Feelings are literally meant to be felt. That's why they're called feelings. So I want you to really think about it. I want you to think about how you approach those feelings and whether you run away from the hard feelings or whether you approach them head on and acknowledge them. And don't, the unhealthy thing, the most unhealthy thing we can do is stuff our feelings down and deep inside and not talk about them and not deal with them. Because slowly, slowly, that pain creeps back into our lives. And then we're forced to deal with it. And it could be months, years, or even decades later that it can ambush us. And often the results are way worse than if we had dealt with the fear and the pain when we first faced it. And I'm not just talking about the pain or the fear of the event, but the fear of dealing with those feelings afterwards. It's okay to feel whatever feelings you have when you're in a tough situation. It's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to not be okay. You just can't live there. Because it's when we live there and keep those feelings bottled up inside that cause depression and anxiety and other health issues. So we have to give ourselves permission to feel the feelings and move on with a more positive thought and find somebody you trust to talk about them. We don't get through the hard things by avoiding them. Ignoring the trauma just makes it worse, and we have to allow ourselves to process it because pretending you're not hurt is not the same thing as healing. We only get through the hard things by facing them head on. Which brings us to our final tool in becoming more resilient. That speak kindly to yourself. So we'll go back to what we talked about earlier, that the voice you hear most often in your head is your own. It's not your family, it's not your friends, it's your own voice. So make sure you're saying kind things to yourself. And when you catch yourself saying negative things, stop and think, would I say that to my 5-year-old self? Would I say that to my best friend? I'm guessing the answer is no. So why do we say those things to ourselves? Several years ago, when I was going through a really hard divorce with the dairy farmer, I went to see a life coach. I felt like I needed to make an investment in myself because now I was a solo parent to 3 kids and they really needed me to figure life out. And at one of our appointments, she asked me what part I played in making all those terrible things happen in my life. And I got really upset because I blamed everyone else for all of the things that happened to me. How could it possibly be my fault what these people did to me? But the truth was that I allowed those people to treat me the way they did. I allowed it. I'm not responsible for what they did, but I allowed them in my life and I allowed them to treat me the way they did. And then my coach gave me something that changed my life forever, and I still use it every day. She gave me a postcard and she told me to put it in my bathroom and read it to myself every single day while I looked in the mirror. And it took me 2 years to be able to say the words out loud to myself because I just couldn't do it. I would look away, I would cry, and sometimes I couldn't even make the words come out of my mouth. I'm sure you're curious what those are. The words were, I deeply and completely love myself. And I want you to, if there's people around you, you don't want to say it out loud, but repeat that to yourself right now. I deeply and completely love myself. Try it again one more time, like you really mean it. I deeply and completely love myself. When I'm in a live room, I usually have at least one person crying when they say those words. And I know it's really hard because I didn't believe them when I said it about myself. But after 2 years of practice, I can say it with confidence. But it took me 2 whole years to make my brain believe that I actually loved myself. Because I was bullied in school, I was treated poorly my whole life by family members, the people who were supposed to love me more than anyone else. And I believed everything they said about me. And the other thing I think a lot of us were taught was that loving yourself made you arrogant or conceited or egotistical. But that's not true. Those are not the same things. If we don't love ourselves, how do we expect other people to love us? So I let the thoughts of other people determine how I felt about myself. And I think we are all guilty of that. And it takes work to change that voice in your head. But I want you to think back to little 5-year-old you. Wouldn't that person be so proud of who you are today? I think they would. So I want you to keep making that little person proud. I want you to keep inspiring the people in your life to look after their own mental health by showing them how well you are looking after your own. And I want you to remember that you can change your lives, your life, and the lives of everyone around you if you just breathe. And if you set those, or sorry, if you believe, you set those really hard boundaries, if you remember that we are all perfectly imperfect, if you focus on what you want, not what everyone else wants, and if you feel all the feelings, you find happiness every single day. I mixed those ones up. And if you speak kindly to yourself and remember that you have everything you need inside of you to get through whatever life throws at you. And look in the mirror every single day and say, I deeply and completely love myself. And while we're getting to the Q&A, I want to ask everyone a huge favor. If you found this session valuable today, the best way you can help me is take a minute to fill out a quick survey. And there's a bonus for you at the end, which is a self-love workbook that will help you build your resilience journey. So if you can just grab your phone or copy the link and fill out the really quick survey, offer some feedback at the end, which are testimonials that I know if it resonated with you or not, and how I can get my message out and that it helped. It would really mean the world to me. So I'll leave that up there for a few minutes, and at the end, we'll show my contact information. But remember that you have everything you need inside of you, and keep believing that. And if you need a little more help, please reach out to the programs that FCC offers. They have so much on their website for this. And feel free to look on my website for the programs that I offer to help people. Because at the end of the day, as Ram Dass once said, we're all just walking each other home, hand in hand, together. Thank you so much. And Katelyn, we can do some questions now.
Taryn, I just knew you were going to inspire us, make us a little misty, little teary-eyed.
I
Thank
was
you.
struggling too.
Thank you so much. We have a lot of questions around a certain topic, and I know you're going to love talking about this. And it's about a B word, boundaries. People want to know
Yeah.
more and more about boundaries. So I want to start it off simple. How do you start setting boundaries?
How do you start? My answer to that is you just do it. It's hard. It is really hard. I started with things like, please don't talk to me that way. Or, I feel like you're disrespecting me right now. Could you please rephrase that? Start with little things. And what happened in my situation was those things didn't work. So I had to make the big step to just say, I can't do this anymore. But starting slowly with just introducing the new you who loves yourself and has self-respect to say, no, you can't talk to me like that anymore. Or no, I don't appreciate when you say that about me. little steps. And like I said, it takes a lot and it depends on who you're working with and where they are where they are in their journey. So like I said, there's a lot of growth spurts in the boundaries thing. But it gets a little bit easier every time you stand up for yourself.
Absolutely. Something that I learned along the way in setting boundaries is boundaries aren't there to keep people out of your life. They're here to keep people in your life. And within those boundaries, you can have those healthy relationships.
Yes. And if it's an unhealthy relationship, do you really want it in your life? And I know that's really hard with family, but we really have to protect our own energy.
Yes, absolutely. Another question here relating back to the mental health aspects. For farming families who feel overwhelmed by daily pressures, where is the best place to start when it comes to prioritizing mental health?
I always like to start around the dinner table, having the conversations around our tables, real honest conversations about how we're feeling, what went well today, what we could improve today. And in farm families, involving the children in that, because if they are the generation you want to, take over someday, I think we need to be open and honest in our conversations, age appropriately, of course. But I think there's so much power in just sitting around a table and having those real conversations.
Right. I was so happy to see in the polling results that people are having these conversations and they are common within their farming operations. And, you know, I try and think of the generation before us or before them, were these conversations that they were having at their dinner table? Probably not.
No. And it really makes me happy that we are talking about this more because we really need to. We're in a mental health crisis. And I think we need to normalize having the conversations for everybody because I think it's probably all women today because this is a women's event. But I know the men in our lives, we're taught to be the tough guys. We're taught not to have feelings. And I think we need to give them permission to do that and as their significant others or their moms or aunts or whatever they are to us, I think we really need to give ourselves and the men in our lives permission to feel.
Absolutely. Permission to feel and to share and to be there to
Yes,
listen
to
to those
talk
shares.
for
Yeah.
sure.
For sure. Question came in. It says, I am at a place in life where I do not know where to start. Any tips on how to figure out a good starting point on a healing journey?
Uh, the journal that I talked about, a guided journal, is always helpful to give you kind of prompts to word. But I am a big proponent of journaling, of just writing down what all those thoughts that come into your head. Don't edit, don't think about them, just pour them out onto a piece of paper and then go back and look at it and think, okay, now you have a starting place. Now you know where you're going because if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So dump it all out of all those thoughts in your head. And I'm a verbal processor. So I like to find a trusted friend and say, I don't want you to give me advice. I don't want you to solve my problems. I just need to get this out. And that helps normalize having conversations. And I think we have to give our whoever we're talking to permission to not try to solve our problems, but to just let you talk.
Right. And I love that you said that you are the verbal processor. And in the polling questions, one of the questions was, what type of support do we need in agriculture? And the number one answer was peer support and community. We
Yeah.
are our own peers. If we need this in our lives, it's likely that other people need this in their lives too. So, where have you found that peer support for yourself?
I found it in like the strangest places, like a book club. I've joined book clubs. We don't talk about the books. We talk about life. And I think that's a way to find people that you have common interests with. Whatever kind of community groups there are really helpful. If you have, sometimes we still have friends from high school that grew up in similar situations, so they might be the people that you can talk to. But I found them in people who have like interests to me. So I'm in women in business groups. I was in a lot of farming groups back when we still had the farm. So it's about finding like-minded people, and they may not even be in your community. They might be online in some kind of online community where you can just be real. And when you can feel comfortable being real, you found your people.
Absolutely. And I am the number one advocate for if that group does not exist and it's on your heart, I think you should start it.
Yes. Rural Women Podcast right
There
there.
you go. I'm going to ask you one last question that we have here. Tell us about vision boards, or how do you visualize and put all of this together to make your dreams come true, Karen?
Well, there are apps online now or websites online that you can do it and just find photos and glue them on a piece on your computer.
Yeah.
But back when I did a vision board, it was with that same life coach who gave me the I deeply and completely love myself tool. We cut pictures out of magazines of what we wanted our ideal life to look like our dream house and our whatever that was. And I did that. And I came home. I was not a believer at the time. And I stuffed it in my office closet. And it was probably about 7 or 8 years later that I decided I would clean that office closet down to the bare bones. And I was like, what is this piece of Bristol board? And I pulled it out, and it was that vision board. And every single thing on it came true.
Okay.
And I had never looked at it since the day I brought it home. So maybe it's if you don't want to have the pictures, write it out in a description of, I would like to have this house in this location with these neighbors, this much in my bank account, and just visualize it actually being real. But the actual photos work. So you can just take a Word document online, find photos online, paste them on, make one in your Pinterest board. That's your vision board. Um, and just visualize that those things can actually happen and believe it.
That's amazing. I want to do a quick thing before we leave, because I really, truly love what you've brought to us about what you say to yourself every morning. So let's all just take a moment, take our deep breath, and then let's all say it together. Big breath. I
I
deeply and
deeply,
completely
completely
love myself.
love myself.
Thank you so much, Karen, for everything today. Your tools
Thank you.
have been so helpful, and I know you've just inspired a whole group of amazing women in agriculture. So thank you.
Thank you. And please reach out to me online if you want to connect further. I would love to hear how this resonated with you, and, stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you. That does it for us here today. And I hope you were all able to take away some actionable insights that will leave you ready to conquer your own challenges and reach new heights of success. My takeaways were, Karen let us know early on that we have everything inside of us to do all of these things. We just have to find it and conquer it for ourselves. So thank you so much. As a reminder, you will receive a link to the recording in a few days. And as I mentioned before, please do not forget to register for the next upcoming 3 sessions to complete FCC Women's Series. You will also receive an email shortly in your inbox with an evaluation. So please fill that out, as FCC values your feedback and it helps them plan future events. On behalf of FCC, thank you all so much for joining us here today, and we hope you have a wonderful day.